The night she was pushed out of the house, the cold felt louder than the words they threw at her. Snow creaked under her thin shoes, and her daughter's small fingers trembled inside her own. The parents-in-law didn't look back. To them, she was no longer family, just a burden who had lost her husband and, with him, her worth. As the door closed, she stood there in the Canadian winter, realizing this was the moment that would either break her forever or change the rest of her life. Her husband had died the previous winter in a highway accident, one of those tragedies that make the local news for a day and then fade. She remembered the kindness of neighbors back then, the casseroles, the quiet hugs. But kindness has limits when grief lingers too long. Her in-laws said she should have figured something out by now. When she couldn't pay rent or childcare, they decided she and her daughter were no longer their responsibility. She didn't argue. She just picked up the backpack with their clothes and walked away. For days, they moved between shelters and bus stations, pretending it was an adventure so her daughter wouldn't cry. But shelters were crowded, and winter nights were unforgiving. One evening, while walking near a wooded area on the edge of town, she noticed an old cave-like opening in a rocky hill. It was shallow but dry, hidden from the wind. Most people would have seen danger. She saw possibility. She cleaned it slowly, using borrowed tools in her bare hands. She collected scrap wood, plastic sheets, and an old door someone had thrown away. Piece by piece, she turned that cold hollow into a tiny cabin. It wasn't pretty, but it was theirs. She insulated the walls with cardboard and fabric. She learned how to safely build a small stove from online videos at the public library. Every night, she held her daughter close and whispered promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Food was the hardest part. Soup kitchens helped, but she wanted something steady. One day, she remembered her grandmother's stories about growing vegetables in unexpected places. Behind the cave, where sunlight touched the ground for a few hours a day, she dug. The soil was rocky, her fingers cracked and bleeding, but she planted seeds she found cheaply at a hardware store. Potatoes, carrots, hardy greens. She carried water in old bottles, even when snow soaked her coat. Spring came slowly. People passing nearby laughed when they noticed the little garden near the rocks. Some shook their heads. A widow growing vegetables near a cave sounded like a sad joke. But when the first green leaves pushed through the soil, she cried harder than she had at her husband's funeral. It meant they could survive. Her daughter helped, hands dirty, laughing for the first time in months. They cooked simple meals, and the cave cabin smelled like warmth instead of fear. She started selling extra vegetables at a small local market, just a basket at first. A few customers asked questions. She told the truth, calmly, without shame. Word spread. A retired teacher helped her apply for housing support. A local carpenter fixed the cabin door. A community garden invited her to join. The same town that had ignored her now saw her strength. 1 year later, she stood in a small apartment, sunlight pouring through clean windows. Her daughter was starting school. On weekends, they still visited the old cave, now empty but peaceful. It reminded her of who she had become. She was kicked out, yes. She was widowed, yes. But she was never powerless. Sometimes survival begins in the coldest place, with nothing but love for a child and the courage to dig into hard ground, believing something will grow.